Hey everyone, I'm Clifford Berger and welcome back to my channel. I'm content creator for A Seasoned Life, and you can find my blog and website at cliffordberger.com. My main focus is that I help men rebrand themselves for success in midlife. And in order to understand where you're at in whatever season, why do we even say midlife? It's because we think of life as coming in stages. So I've chosen to use that metaphor of seasons to the year, comparing them to the seasons of our lives and thinking about whatever season you might be in at a given time. I've given a little series on the four seasons, and I'm going to conclude that with this video. I've already covered spring and summer, fall, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the season of winter and what that means. Well, what are the things that happen in the winter in nature, let's say? Well, it's a season for a change of the light. The days are shorter. It's a time when things need protecting. You've kind of tucked in the garden and the flower beds for the winter. It's a time when storms blow. There may be ice and snow, at least in certain areas. The further south you are, of course, the less of that sort of thing there is. But it's a time of when things go dormant. Essentially, the leaves come off the trees, the sap isn't running anymore. The animals go wherever they go. Some of them hibernate and they've fattened themselves up for the winter for that. And so there's that kind of dormancy that takes place, and everything just kind of rests until once again the spring comes. Well, I get it that winter isn't everyone's favorite season. In fact, you rarely hear much of anybody say that winter is their favorite season. For a lot of people, they like the summertime or the fall when there's still nice weather, that sort of thing, maybe springtime. But that doesn't mean that winter is without its pleasures and joys as well. So, what are some of those things? Well, in the winter, it's a time of looking back for sure and reflecting on the seasons that have just passed, enjoying the fruit of that. But in our lives, we tend to enjoy some things in the winter. The holiday season is a time when families come together. There's a sense of celebration, closeness, community. We decorate things. We bring out the lights. We enjoy some times of just kind of cozying up with a cup of hot chocolate or something, a blanket, fireplace, and a movie, and just resting and enjoying ourselves. And so winter isn't all negative. It's a time of reaping the benefits from the seasons just past, and then once again sowing the seeds for the springtime to come. Well, in our lives, if we were to compare the seasons of our life to that, what would be the season of winter? Well, I had suggested some age ranges for the other seasons that I had talked about, recognizing that those are just broad ranges that won't apply to everyone. But in general, I think fall, let's say, is like 60s and 70s, the autumn of life for many people, or at least late summer if you're in your early 60s. But I think that by the time a person is in, say, late 70s and 80s, 90s, beyond, not that many people live much beyond, but many people these days live into their 80s and 90s. I think you could safely say that that's the winter of life at that point. People, their careers have often come to a conclusion years before, although there are some people who retool for some other meaningful career type of activity or even start a business or something. But for many people, it is a time of kind of reducing activity, taking some refuge, perhaps, Some people need protection in that season of life as they get old and infirm and need assistance or need care ultimately. This all kind of sounds like it could be negative, but the fact is there is an end to the four seasons before it all starts over again. We need to come to terms with that. Our lives don't go on forever. We live through the various seasons, and eventually those seasons do come to an end and we pass on. And the more that we are realistic about that and able to think about that intelligently and even strategically, I think the more satisfying and successful our lives can be, whatever season you're in. Because oftentimes being in a season means living into that, enjoying the benefits of that season, and at the same time preparing for the next. So in the season of winter, that it entails all of those things that I just mentioned, but it also includes, in many ways, uh, the elements that will come to life in the spring that follows. The seeds are there. We've harvested the crops, but oftentimes the seeds from those crops, even if the plants die out, the seeds are there and will be replanted. So we have to think about the fact that we don't grind the same grain twice. That grain came from, um, a prior year, a prior plant. But some of that we put in the ground and it creates new plants. We don't eat the same apple twice, but the seeds for new trees are inside of the apple. And so, we have to think in terms of the plants that lived and gave their lives in the year just past, have within them the seeds for the new life that will come in the spring. So think about that in that way, and what kind of seeds are you planting so that by the time you are in the winter of your life, and even when the winter of your life comes to a close, what seeds will you have planted that will be able to reproduce and continue on into the next season? So those are some of the things that I wanted to present in this little series on seasons of life. And I would encourage you, whoever you might be watching this, to be thinking about whatever season you're in. Many of my readers, people that follow my content, are in the summer. If you're like a midlife person in your 40s or 50s, that's pretty much the summertime of life, full maturity, when you are reaping the benefits of that full maturity and the influence and leadership that can happen in that stage of life, and the harvest that often comes. We harvest and reap in many ways in our lives, and so be thinking about those things and how you can create the most positive and abundant harvest possible, so that as you move into the season that follows, there's always something there to work with. All right, I have enjoyed creating this little series, and I will move on to the next topic, starting with the next video, and I'll see any of you who are watching in the next one.